So here we've got five successful entrepreneurs from our community, who's volunteered to come and give their wisdom and their experiences with running a business, from being a consultant, hopefully from being a consultant to running a successful business. So people sitting here don't need any introduction, but for people who are new to the community, I'd like to go through each. So I'll go as it appears on my screen. So Sam is on top. So Sam runs a teaching and consultancy business, and he sticks to engineering principles and is an advocate of unit testing and following software principles. And if you don't follow his blog, you should do. And if I'm missing something, please do add to it, Sam. Sam is muted, but anyway, so...
Sorry, I was typing because I was going to put my blog in the chat. But you did a very good job, Sri. So you can continue. I'm going to mute myself again.
Okay. Next on my screen is John. John runs Boulder Software, and he has many employees and has run a successful business for over a decade or so now, if I'm not wrong. He has a presentation coming up about System Link and Test Stand later in this event. And he has built up a software business right from scratch now to a really successful business. Next is Steve Watts. He doesn't need any introduction, but I guess... I will add this much. So when I started off using LabVIEW, it was more of a tool, and it's only after I sort of read his book, or I also had the privilege of sort of working with his code at some point, that I made the transition of making it from a tool to a bona fide, programming language. I don't know if that makes any sense. But the thing is, that's the first time I started looking at LabVIEW as an engineering or as a software engineering tool than just a utility or a tool that gets me from A to B. Next is Ram. Ram runs a teaching and consultancy business again. And he's based in India and Nepal, if I'm not wrong. And he mentors and teaches, does classes and courses, which allows people to certify CLA, CTA, that kind of thing. And Steen is based out of Denmark and runs G-Power. Again, I look up to Steen because he has similar sort of interests to me based on LabVIEW and Test Stand. He runs a very successful business out of Denmark in G-Power, and all of the toolkits that he put out. So if you ever have a look at the G-Power toolkits, you can see the thought and the process that has gone into it. And we're very thankful to all of you. And if I've missed anything, please do add to it. So, is there anything to add? Looks like no. So you guys are too modest. So I would start asking my questions. So I have some topics that I've prepared. So my first thing would be like what Steve said before we started was, a lot of people are afraid of making that leap from a 9-to-5 employee to a consultant or running a business. So how do you think you can make that? What preparation do you think you need to make that leap? So anyone wants to take this?
I think it's just a leap. I think you just do it. I know John and I talk a lot, and John's always talking about how hard it is, and it's hard. But if you wait until you have it figured out, you will never do it. because there's just so much to learn and know, and you just kind of, I take like an agile approach, agile from software development. Try something, see if it works, and keep iterating, and stick with what works and keep adding to it. That's my advice.
I think for me, there are different motivations. My main motivation was I was bored, and I'm just terrible when I'm bored, and so that was it. I felt, I was talking earlier, I felt constrained by working in a factory because I knew all the machines in that factory, and so actually starting out outside of that was really my main motivation, and whatever it has to be, that motivation has to overcome the fear. And to be quite honest with you, permanent employment, they've chipped away at the benefits of being permanently employed so much that the transition to actually working for yourself is not that big, So that was really for me.
Yeah, for me it was I was kind of a victim of circumstance. I hadn't really considered starting a consultancy business, and during the .com era, the company I was at, Sun Microsystems, was going through a lot of reductions in force, and I got caught up in that. And someone in the local LabVIEW community had some extra work and asked me if I wanted to come do that, and hadn't even crossed my mind to go be a consultant. And so I went and got my S corporation filed. I went and started doing the paperwork like the next day, and I had an S corporation instantiated within a couple of weeks, so that when he was ready to pay me, I had a way to accept payment. But yeah, I just jumped in. I never really set out to start a business. It just kind of came my way, and I've loved it ever since. It's been a really exciting journey. It's a lot more exciting than sort of being an employee at the same old company for a long time, because you get to do a very wide variety of projects. You're constantly changing gears. So anyway, that's how I got started.
I can add that the leap from employee to maybe consultant or one-person company isn't that big. It's and not too dangerous, I'd say, especially the people that probably think about doing that are quite proficient and well-balanced persons to have those thoughts. So go ahead and do it. It might be quite a bigger leap to start adding on employees, and at that point you realize that you have some responsibilities, that you suddenly are not just the master of yourself. You can't just leave that ship because you feel like it. As long as you're yourself, you can change back. You can do a lot of different things. You have responsibilities for yourself, your family, obviously, but that step isn't too big. If people are thinking about doing that, have a go at it. It's not dangerous. And then maybe use that as training or something like that to try and have a business, try and see what new responsibilities pops up. There are maybe new things you need to do tax-wise and stuff like that. And when you have got that down, and then start taking care of your own vacations, your own pensions, your own all the paperwork that you need to do, insurance and stuff like that, then you might be able to start tackling adding on employees. If you're like that, that is a much bigger step in my experience.
So I mean, from what it sounds like, I mean, a lot of you guys were naturally, sort of going towards that. But for somebody who's planning to do this, I mean, so who is a methodical, planned person, and so if they have to do a business plan and also have some funds in place so that they know that for the next 6 months or so, I'm okay if I fail or not. I mean, this is we only see the successes in our community, right? But a lot of people do try and fail. And so what would be your, one or two sort of bullet points to consider before people, for people who are thinking about this seriously and not being forced into that situation, if you like?
Sri, okay, go ahead. Yeah, so Sri, I'll share a little bit of how the insight, how I got into a consultancy job a little bit, and I'll pivot towards the second question. So for me, how I got from becoming an employee to now running a business is basically initially I was consulting for National Instruments itself in India, and that is where I got exposed to many customers, and I think this can be one of the insight on whether you want to move it, because slowly gradually as you moved as an employee, as you get exposed to many customers, and now you understand how business is being done, and then what they're doing towards and what the skill set you can offer. That is how as you know more and more people in the industry, slowly I think that will provide you a little bit of safety net also, because you got the returning customers. That is one point of part. And another thing is what we call as the USP in business, so unique selling point, what you can deliver. For example, as far as I know, Sam is always sharing. I actually love he joins. He's software engineering principles in LabVIEW, plus his adventure for the rock climbing and everything. And similar to that one, while I was starting out and everything at that time, I saw that there was a huge gap in the skill set of LabVIEW in Indian industry. People were developing application, they're sending in codes to the application engineering team, and then all the codes were the maps of the world. Okay, so that is where I got this motivation, and possibly I can make a difference. And that is where my company called Graphtex came into the play, because there was a gap in the industry. So one of the unique selling point, possibly you can have what I can deliver, the value which is missing in the market. I think that can be one of the thing. And at the same time, as you move it, you can actually, develop and then slowly. I think we're in the pivot point. We're on the way, maybe moving from Sam's place or the John's place and moving towards Steen, because we're also getting more and more projects, and it's not possible for me alone to develop everything. But at the same time, I need to hire people, and we got a lot of developers in India. So that's where I need to take more of a leadership role, and then paperwork, negotiations, and all that kind of stuff is going to pile up. So I think people who want to jump from from becoming the employee, where it is the safe place. Okay, let's say I'm going to get the salary every month, and that is where Steve was also saying that becoming an employee was as much as risk as becoming a full-time employee or a freelancer. So that is where
So you're saying that identify the gap in the market before you do take that leap. So in your case, you found that training was one of the gaps, and then
correct,
But so one thing that I would sort of ask is, if you do make that leap, and then you find that there are projects coming in, and so like Steen said, maybe hiring the first person. So this really terrifies me, to be responsible for another person. And if for whatever reason your projects stop coming, and how do you, have you been in that situation, first of all? And secondly, so do you ever worry about it? And what can you tell people, from what your experience has been?
In my personal...
Learn how to save. Sorry, I cut you off, Ram. You go.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to be as brief as possible, so that we can have diverse input into this one. So basically, in my context, since I have trained a lot of people in the past, most of them were engineers. I think 95% were engineers, and 5% was the scientists from government organization and other R&D companies, and like a very few numbers were students. So what actually happened is like because of possibly like I had this kind of network, like although these guys were like a good in developing applications or something, like they might have larger projects which their team are incapable of fulfilling them. So that they would reach out to us, and then like for us, like there's not much of an issue, but like sometimes what actually happens is like I'll very, very honest, like at least in India, it's still like I can tell you like a 95% to 96% of the LabVIEW developers, they are like a very bad with like a following like a what Sam wants to instill, and then like people don't even know like about object-oriented programming is still there in LabVIEW. So like this is one of the things. So whenever we get the projects from outside, let's say like from US or like offshore projects, in that case it's like it's very difficult to find the people. Although like we can have LabVIEW developers, but like it's still difficult to find the people who can actually deliver projects using like OOPS or like the actor framework. So in that case, so like you're kind of like the scenario what you are asking, it a little bit terrifies, but at the same time, because I have the background of training people, so that is where I try to nurture them so that like slowly prepare and then mentoring them to handle that project. Yeah.
Okay, so from what I know, Steen and John has made that leap of adding employees to your organization. So do you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. I have a lot of people approach me at user group meetings asking me, how can I get started doing this? And one of the first things I ask them is, do you have McDonald's wrappers in the back of your car? And do you mow your lawn every week? Do you shovel your snow? And believe me, I've seen Sam's car, and I asked him those questions when he first wanted to get started. There's a lot more to a LabVIEW business than writing LabVIEW code. And everybody, I've seen a lot of the comments. Everybody says, "Oh, all you need is a laptop and a LabVIEW license." And that's a great way to get started, but there's a lot more to it than that. And you've got to build out your infrastructure, and I'd like to talk about that on another question if possible. But before that, you've got to get your business instantiated with the local, state, and federal governments, and you've got to be able to, fill out all the forms quarterly and annually. You might want to talk to a lawyer. You might want to hire an accountant. Eventually, if you do hire employees, you have to do payroll. You're going to need some financial software. You're going to need to collect those hours from your employees to bill them through to your customer, unless you're doing fixed price bids. Even then, you're probably going to want to know how much your employees are working. So if you're not a detail-oriented person, this might not be the business for you. There's a lot of extra work that goes into it above and beyond being a good LabVIEW coder. The infrastructure can be really daunting. And like I said, I'm hoping there's a question down further into this presentation about infrastructure. But just getting the business started and keeping the forms filed and keeping your business legit is a lot more work than you might think it is. And then hiring once you get employees, you might want to offer them benefits. You might want to give them 401k plans. You might want to give them medical insurance. So it can get a lot more complicated than you think. If you're just a one-man band, you're not going to have to worry too much about that stuff. But as soon as you start adding employees, it gets a lot more complicated.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm kind of missing in this conversation is know yourself. I think the comment came up. It said, if it's not for you, it's not for you. It's not a bad thing. It's but there are a particular type of person that does it, and there are different motivations, and the motivation really to do this kind of thing could be like me, boredom, and I want to build things in different places of different types of things, and I like that lack of discipline in the work, and the other thing for me is freedom. So I don't want to employ people. So my business is a partnership because I want my partners to be the same, have the same motivations as me. So, and because I don't like management, so my business will stay the size it is. And that's fine because it's my business. that's the beauty of being in business yourself. You can make your business a reflection of you. There's nothing to say that you have to have growth all the time and all of this. You just need to make a decent living, and that's adequate. Certainly is for me anyway. I mean, as long as I get a variety of things to build that are interesting, then I'm a happy bunny. So, there's routes you can go, and it suits your type of personality. And that's the beauty of it. But know thyself, really just know yourself and know what you want from it.
So did you ever consider adding employees to your business, or were you basically saying, okay, we'll do with contractors when we have extra work, and or is it not something that you've considered?
Yes, I have had contractors, and it's just you end up maintaining a lot more of other people's software than you would like. So it was really what it does. One of my motivations, or one of my worries when I started in business, would be at some point in time I'd have so much software out there, because you can be quite productive, that I would spend all my time maintaining all this code that I generated, and which is why I apply a lot of the disciplines I do to the way I write my software, is because I don't want to be doing that. And again, there's a perfectly good business case to do that, if that's what you want to do.
I mean, so this is... this is another question, isn't it? I mean, so when you are an engineer, I mean, you're always innovating and you're adding features, and there's feature creep and things like that. As a business owner, you can't afford to do that. I mean, because that's your time wasted, right? I mean, so how do you put that kind of ring fence around you to make sure that you're not, one, being an engineer, exploring and adding things to to the software that you're providing to somebody? I mean, so how do you maintain that discipline? I mean, are there any tools or things that you do? I mean, spreadsheets where you say, this has gone too far, or even control your employees from, sort of drifting onto that path. I mean, because we're all engineers at the end of the day.
So
know your efficiency and know your hourly rate. That was my two things. I'll shut up now.
Okay, cool.
So this kind of touches on some of the infrastructure stuff for me anyway. I use a bug tracker to do project management. And the way I keep engineers on track is, at our peak, we had 6 employees and 3 subcontractors, and they were spread across at least half a dozen projects, probably more like a dozen projects, and not full-time on each one. So they might bounce around between projects. And, the way we managed that was with our bug tracker. We would assign people into groups in the bug tracker and assign them on sprints. And, they might not be full-time on a sprint, but they might be doing 2 or 3 sprints at the same time across different customers, across different projects. That can get really tricky to manage in a spreadsheet. I wouldn't recommend doing it in a spreadsheet. I'd recommend a bug tracker at the very least. The bug tracker we use has a Gantt chart, which tends to get into the realm of project management. So that's kind of how, the mechanism we use. The bug tracker is a real central part of the way we do business.
So an issue tracker such as Jira or something similar to make sure that you have an idea of what's happening. So the next question really is, do you guys cold call people to get more business in? I mean, and as an engineer, I think I'd quote Steve again here, where you say we're all introverts as engineers, and for us to be people who don't have the inhibition to talk to people about, especially money and stuff. I mean, so how do you approach that? I mean, first thing is, do you cold call, and how do we get past that inhibition? Because right now you're playing the role of an engineer and an entrepreneur, an account manager, and everything else.
So cold calling works. Unfortunately, it does, but you need to. Warm calling is better. So if you do a job for, I don't know, a car maker, solving a particular problem, there's quite a lot of other car makers that have that same problem. So look at what jobs you've done, look at potential clients and ring them up. That's called warm calling, which is a lot better because you've got a success. You can say, I did it this way. So I'm very keen on that type of, and it works. It's just horrible, because we're not used to doing it, but it works. And you can market till you're blue in the face, and make as many, all my years of writing blog posts, I've gotten zero business from that. All my presentations at CLA summits, zero business from that, because essentially I'm marketing to the wrong people. Whereas cold calling, you're saying, I did this job for someone, they paid me. There must be other people out in the world who would pay me. So you've already got a conversation point going. So you just need to find them then, and that's just research. LinkedIn's great for that. But it's the other thing I found recently is you find a business development manager from another company and get him to do the hard work if you're a small company. And that works really well. I like that.
Hiring somebody part-time, to do your cold calling, so that kind of works for you.
Well, again, if you're a small company, you can go to if a company is essentially their main job is making, test systems, the wiring of it, and they're a much bigger company to you. Well, you could go to them and say, well, look, you could add software to your business here, and think how much better that would be. Do you want to partner up? And usually those companies have dedicated business development people that will then go out and sell your stuff. But you have to make it so that people make money out of you. But if you can convince people to make money out of you, you're onto a winner. It's life is easy. If you don't like the selling, if you like the selling, go sell.
Yeah.
But there are alternatives.
So when you do that, and you get some customers, I worked in companies where they don't, or their supply chain or supply terms are 6 months after delivery, payments after 6 months of delivery. How do you deal with customers who essentially are too big, where they can almost bully you? So to say that, okay, these are our payment terms, so you complete the project and then we can pay you after 6 months or so. Do you have any wisdom on that?
If I don't pay on time, second.
Luckily, my wife works in credit and collections for a big company like that. So when I have problems, she helps me get paid. I got to say, in my 17 years, I've only had one incident where a customer actually didn't follow through on a payment. But in terms of negotiating terms, net 30, net 60, net 90, it's David and Goliath. You don't have a lot of leverage. Some companies are like, that's our policy, and take it or leave it. You've got to, as many of the people have said in the comments here, you got to have some savings. You've got to be able to, get out there for a year or two and not count on a steady income or count on getting paid 3 months after you've done the work. Best case, 1 month after you've done the work. It is sort of a David and Goliath situation. You really don't have a lot of leverage to change those big companies' terms and your payment terms.
Like Steve said, you could probably sack somebody. You've got plenty of work. But if you don't have that luxury and you are dependent on such a big company, so you, and say, for example, you have to buy hardware for 200K or whatever, for them to pay you 500K later on. So do you generally approach banks with some orders so that you can sort of fund that purchase initially before? No. So always the customer
If they don't pay in 30 days, we don't do business with them. If they want us to buy hardware and they don't pay, generally they have to buy it up front. And just don't put yourself under that sort of risk and pressure if you're unhappy about it. You don't have to do business with everyone. And quite often they come back. Quite often, if you stand strong and say no, this is not acceptable. Because you've got an intellectual cudgel to beat them with. Generally, they're coming to you because you're the brain that they're after. So just stand firm. I know, and if you can't, if you're already in there, well then plan to get out. I mean, it took me my first customer used to treat me terribly, but it took me a year to get out. But that was always a plan. Is you plan to not have those customers, and over the years I've surrounded myself by nice customers who pay me on time and want to help me, and it makes life so much nicer.
Well, and when it comes to hardware, that kind of gets into what kind of a business are you trying to establish? If you're going to be a reseller for NI and you plan on selling a lot of hardware, that's a lot different than just doing software consultancy. They're similar businesses and there's a lot of overlap, but there's different headaches that come along with the turnkey systems integration stuff. We tend to focus just on software. If customers want hardware, we might make recommendations, but we're not a reseller. Not yet anyway. We might be on our next project, but for now, we don't resell any NI hardware or any Keysight hardware. We simply consult on software. It's a much easier business to run without all the hardware headaches.
So once you do that, and once you make your niche in the market, one is to appear visible, and then even though Steve said that none of my CLA presentations have earned me any customers, but you are visible, right? So you make a presentation. So for example, Steam puts out G-Power Toolkit. So what other marketing strategy do you use to make yourself visible? So say in Denmark, for example, for you to attract a customer, what else do you do? Do you go to trade fairs? Do you sort of advertise somewhere?
Well, Denmark is a bit special, not to every place else in the world, but NI used to have a very large presence regionally here, which they have withdrawn for a number of years ago. So currently it's quite dead water here for NI. There is no regional office. There is no regional presence. The nearest NI support is a number of countries away. So the customers here in Denmark are more or less left to themselves, and if they know somebody that are working at G-Power or some of the others, the other integrators here or the other partners here, they contact us or some of the other guys, and but else they'll just look at ni.com or maybe call up one of the phone numbers and get somebody in a sort of different country. So marketing or branding yourself as an NI partner has become increasingly hard in Denmark and in many other places of the world where NI has withdrawn their presence a lot. So that is one thing that probably puts the business of LabVIEW and TestN and NI apart from just the general business as maybe a contractor or a freelancer or a programmer or what are you. That is something that I've discovered over the years, that relying on NI as the ecosystem or the backing infrastructure of a company is difficult. More than perhaps relying on, Microsoft or somebody else like that. It could have been different in back in the day with Microsoft, and it might be different in the future as well. Currently, NI as the sole foundation of a company is very difficult. Consider that carefully if you want to go this way. But then again, there is also a difference of scale of companies, and that is something that is worth considering when growing a business. If you want to do that, I have my own reasons for why G-Power is more than myself and more than maybe 2 or 3 people today. We are about around 15 people. So there are reasons for that, and we can get to those if it's relevant in a while. But attracting customers for us where we are now is mostly about inbound marketing based on cases and our network. So cold calling, as we discussed a minute ago, well, yeah, that works. But if you have the time, if you have the manpower, the bandwidth to do warm calling, actually to put your opportunities and your potential customers through the funnel and only talk to the people that have a good chance of actually becoming your customers, that's time much better spent. If you see yourself spending time cold calling, that's a risk. It's a real risk. It's an energy drain on yourself. It's an energy drain on your customers or the people you call. Yes, you will probably get some work from that. It might not be the best work, and it might be a dead end. So it's hard to build on top of the customers that you found that way. Finding and following the hot leads and managing those, getting more business from the customers that you already know, is a much better fit for new customers. And so then it will be yeah.
Go for it. Sorry.
So yeah, but then it will be it will build on top of itself. Successful projects that you did will draw in new projects and new customers. But once you reach, there is probably a step somewhere where, at least in my experience, where we change from an economy that is comparable to a personal economy, and to some place where it definitely wasn't a personal economy anymore, where it's a business economy. Managing those two scenarios are very different. When it's yourself or maybe just a couple of people, you can more or less manage dips in finances and budgets, and if you don't get paid, you can more or less manage that with your own savings by putting some money into the company and taking them out again when you're more successful, you have some business. At some point, that's not going to do it anymore. At the moment, my personal finances wouldn't run this company for a single month. So that won't work at that scale. So scale the company once your processes are ready for it. Don't add on people before you have processes put in place that manages your risks, your contracts. You have some descriptions of your roles. You have some ideas of who your customers are, how you get new customers, how you communicate your messages and so on. Who does your website? Who does your IT? Who does your security? Who sets up new computers? Who are speaking with NI and your other partners and all that stuff. And today, managing customers, new customers, I have people helping me with that, but I'm still also a part of it. And if you're growing a company to maybe 4, 5, or 6 people, you'll probably find yourself being much more of an administrator and salesperson than a LabVIEW programmer running that company. And once you get to maybe where we are now, or maybe, I don't know, about 10 people or so, you start to be able to divide that work out onto more people. And then you can start being the technician again, if that's what you want.
So the thing I'm hearing is that, so making the leap from a consultant to from an employee to a consultant is fairly easy. But when you want to grow, you want to make sure your processes are in place. You have finances that can support the extra employees, or or means to support that. And also, you should have an established customer base where the work is coming in without you having to work extra hard to find those extra things. I mean, new customers will be more welcome, but I mean, you have an established base, and you also then say you have a defined role in the company, and then you identify all your partners as such. So one of the questions that keeps coming up is how do you hire the right talent, right? I mean, so whether you go contracting, whether you go for an experienced person or a graduate. So Sam puts his hand up. I mean, so I'd like to hear.
You said talent. Don't hire talent. Hire good people.
Okay.
Train them for the things that you need them to do. That's my advice right there.
Okay, so you're saying people with the right attitude to learning, and that's what you need. Right?
Yep. People who are willing to learn and who you get along with. Those two things right there. Everything else will work itself out.
Okay. So
Totally agree.
So do you have a strategy to learn? I mean, either hire graduates and then train them up, or whether do you go for experienced people? General rule.
So in Colorado, there's a lot of what I would call one-man band LabVIEW consultancies, or there were at one point. They've really kind of diminished in the last 5 years. So rather than hiring, I did have a handful or more of employees at one point, and they all had some skill in LabVIEW, but they had other skills too, like embedded C or MATLAB or something like that. But when it comes to finding LabVIEW people, Colorado has always been a really easy place to go find a subcontractor. I don't know if that's true in other geographical areas. I think it's probably true in Texas and California. I'm not sure about the UK. That's a really good way to get somebody on a project, but not employ them and not be responsible for their payroll. It puts you in a situation where you need a guy for, a few months, but he's kind of responsible for his own business. I've done that many times, and it works really well. Bringing on employees is a different story. And what I look for there is absolutely, as Sam said, good people. But I also need to match skills to my customer. I definitely have people that are targeting specific things like MATLAB, for instance, not all the time, and just as an off-the-cuff example, or Python or Java or whatever, the task is at hand. And if you don't have employees that already have that skill, then you either need to go find one or you need to get a subcontractor temporarily to help you out with that.
Okay, so another question that's on the chat is, how do you become an NI partner? So do you guys have any input on that? I know everybody's smiling. I know for what reason, but I'd like to hear from you guys.
The partnership program has changed a lot over the 17 years I've been a partner. I actually haven't been a partner that long. It's been about 14 years. You definitely have to have some certifications. They're going to require that you have a CLA on board or a CTA or whatever. Then they're going to want to get into, are you a reseller or what type of partner are you? And that has also changed over the years. I think I needed a sponsor at one point just to get started, and then you have to pay your partnership fee, but that gets you your LabVIEW license. It's not a purchase, it's a lease, and you have to pay it every year, but you get all the toolkits. You get test stand and, FPGA, all that stuff. So that's a great way to get the software, but it is an annual cost, and you've got to have some certifications in place to get started. Beyond that, and I apologize, NI, but I wouldn't expect a lot more from the partnership than that. You're not going to get fed a lot of business leads. You're on your own for running your business, and you're on your own for getting your customers and getting your leads and stuff. The partnership I wouldn't set my expectations too high on once you get that partnership.
Okay.
It's a misconception I had when I joined 2001, I think I became an alliance partner. And for many years, I sat there frustrated that I wasn't being given all the leads that the sales guys were keeping to themselves, until I discovered that actually the sales guys didn't have any leads to give. It's just not set up for that. It's not in their interests. They have no benefit. They're not judged upon it. Nobody in NI will be given congratulations for making your business a success. It's not. So the term partnership at the moment is reasonably loose. It could be better. It could be a partnership, and it could be quite powerful as a partnership. This is what I'm hoping for in the future. But these things happen slowly. It's a big company, but really, the best way for you to become an alliance partner is for you to have something that NI want from an alliance partner. So they're not going to make you an alliance partner just because you're great, It's really they would have to be either on the lookout for alliance partners in your area. You have to sell something that has their hardware in it, or they want to put their hardware in it. You have to have something to give them and say, look, if I was an alliance partner, we could do great things. And that discussion has to be that way round, because you can ask for it and expect it, but it's up to them how many partners they have. And sometimes they just say we've got enough, and then sometimes they'll say we won't need loads more. So in all those internal machinations you're not aware of, so it gets quite frustrating. But it's generally, it's not a given.
One of the ways that the partner program has changed a lot recently, and that change has been gradual over the last 10 years, but it has changed a lot over the last maybe 3 years, is the change from the partners being good representatives of NI, and that was when certifications and stuff like that actually meant a lot. Now NI is growing up. It's changing to become a much bigger company, and so they're focused on solutions. So if you can contribute with solutions in some areas that NI is focusing on, then you're probably at a company or person that could be an NI partner. They have changed a lot of how they view their customers, and so some customers are managed or handled by distributors, and some of their customers are that makes a good fit for their current business model are still handled directly by NI, and that change has also been driven a lot by solutions in the proper markets. So today, I think it would be. I have no idea how you become a partner today if you are one person.
So right now the business model of NI has changed, and to become a partner as a single person is difficult, but it was. Yes. Yeah. So one of the questions that comes up on the forums and also in this chat is, I don't know who my field service engineer is. So if you don't know and you're already a partner, so there is a partner-only forum on ni.com. Steen is smiling, but so if you need to be added to that, I mean, it does get some more attention than the general forum. If you're not aware of whom to contact, I mean, so contact one of us, and then we'll give you the contact person at NI to do this. So my next question would be, I mean, so when you put a training plan for a person, I mean, so you invest in an employee, and that person sort of, one, maybe not turn out to be as good as you thought a person was. I mean, so your investment is gone, or he or she leaves after a year or so. I mean, so how can you make some I mean, so this is where the experience against training comes into picture, right? I mean, so how do you weigh this? I mean, because as a small business, it's a big risk for you, I would have thought.
It's a big risk for any business, I think. Investing in people is necessary, and you should always do that. If you don't and they stay, what then? So
no. Yeah, I've seen that meme, but
yeah, but it's very true. And if you do as Sam suggested, find the right people, then it might be a good fit. They might learn LabVIEW, or they might be a good fit anyways for your company, for some role there. Sure, if you need LabVIEW programmers, it doesn't make good sense if you don't have LabVIEW programmers. But yeah,
if you, I mean,
it's a leaky bucket, isn't it? I mean, you need to keep filling up the bucket, and everyone needs to do that, because at some point you're going to want to drink from it, and so it doesn't matter if you train them and leave, because presumably you will then go to want to replace them with somebody who's trained. And if nobody's doing any training for fear of them leaving, then that bucket will go dry.
So, I mean, one question is, I mean, so if you were approached by a customer and then they say, I need a test solution, how do you convince them to say, okay, you need to take LabVIEW or test on and not Python, which is free, as far as they're concerned? I mean, so, because initially, when maybe 10 years ago, it was easy to sort of show the difference that, okay, C or C++ takes that much more longer. With the introduction of Python, it's not that much more of a bridge, if you like, between solutions based on Python and LabVIEW. So how do you, one, keep it to be an NI-based system or a business, or do you sort of accept that change and then add Python as one of the tools that you provide solutions for?
I like to approach it sort of as a total cost of ownership type of idea. You can program any solution in any language within reason. Which language you pick doesn't really dictate the cost or the technical benefits of your solution. LabVIEW has been traditionally great at instrumentation and test and measurement, and that's the way I always position it. But I've definitely had people come back and say, I'll just hire a college student and write it all in Python. Well, good luck. Call me back in 12 months. Because I'll do it in test stand a lot faster than that, test stand and LabVIEW. And then not only have they not scoped the problem and the total cost of ownership properly, they may have even put themselves in technical debt that they may have to dig out of later, because they hired, they thought, I can just get a college student that knows Python, and then they end up with spaghetti code in a different language that still has to be fixed. So I don't know. That's the way I approach it, total cost of ownership.
I don't really understand why the go-to skill that is, everyone talks about this, we've talked about it at length, the go-to skill for a LabVIEW programmer, if they can't find LabVIEW work, is Python. Just seems to me to be a bizarre thing. So I'm going to leave this language for developing systems and go and try and learn a language that all the kids are learning. Is that really who you want to be competing with? Do you really want to be competing with low-wage kids going to join university or Udemy learning Python? I don't think I want to play that game. You'd be much better off learning Fortran, to be quite honest with you, and go and find some jobs or small talk or something, and go and find a job that's a rare skill. I just don't understand it. I think about complementary skills. Don't think about replacement skills. So if LabVIEW can do a certain amount of things, well, find something that's complementary that allows you to do more. Do PLC programming, learn Linux, do databases. I don't know, but find a complementary skill you can add on and build around your current toolbox. Don't say, oh, this spanner's a bit a bit crap, I'm going to go buy another spanner. It's just, it just seems strange to me. It seems a bizarre kind of.
I mean, the thing is, you offer a customer solution, and then they go, okay, we need to add features to this, and we will be doing further development on this software that you provide. But then, if it was LabVIEW, they have to buy 3 or 4 licenses, whereas Python, they don't have to, right? I mean, so that's one argument that comes through. And then NI right now, almost all of the drivers now have Python support. So that makes it, I mean, before it was like, it's plug and play with hardware, with LabVIEW, more or less, right? So that bridge is closing, and it makes it harder to justify, sort of sticking to the LabVIEW costs for the customers, at least.
It isn't the hardware drivers. That's not why I use LabVIEW.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for you, for you, it is the way of thinking, right? I mean, it is how you express. I mean, from your presentations, I understand. But for most people, or at least how NI market it is like, have 3 nodes and there's hardware, and you're streaming 100 megabytes of data per second, right? So
that might be their marketing, and not actually the real world of LabVIEW programming. They might be separate things.
So the hour has passed by, and I had a lot more questions to ask you guys. But before we leave, do you have one comment each from each of you before for people who are thinking about starting their own business? Let's start with Sam.
Nobody really mentioned mentorship, but I think that's huge. So go find yourself a mentor. I am sure I will gladly help you out, and if anybody here, I'm sure will, and Fab, I think, is into that too. So, if you're having trouble, reach out to somebody and ask around. So that's my advice.
Okay, John?
It's a really exciting thing to do. There's lots of different projects, medical, renewable energy, aerospace. You're all over the place, and it's a lot of fun. It's very challenging mentally, so be up for the task. Build out an infrastructure, build out a good bug tracker and revision control and accounting, and get an infrastructure in place.
Steve?
I've not regretted it for a second, even when the highs are much higher, the lows are clearer. There's nothing worse than being stressed out by an idiot manager. You don't get that. You get customers, of course, but you don't get managers.
Ram?
I would say that there is a philosophy. Some of us has said that you are in a ship or something. So basically, if you are an employee, then you are on a ship, it's going to its own destination. You have been taken somewhere else. So I think Steve's words also a little bit echoes over here. So basically, what I said is while you are in a ship for a time being, you have to learn to build your own boat, so that you test it out on the side. So when you are safe enough, you can hop onto your boat or submarine, whatever you want to say, and then you can go towards your own destination. I think and that is where I want to connect towards Sam's as well as John's as also. For example, a little bit of business, management skills, and then paperworks will pile up very quickly. And then Sam was saying that mentorship, you will certainly need that.
Steve?
Yeah, I agree that you should probably realize that you need more skills than you have. People considering this and working with LabVIEW in the first place, which is very hardware engineer, you're probably quite proficient software engineer and hardware engineer, somewhere around that. But you need some business skills as well, and you need some confidence in yourself. The best way is to talk with people who have tried it, and just go for it. It's quite risk-free to do it yourself. Just being yourself, right? One person. So try that out, and then talk to people. This community is great at sharing experiences, also about business and being consultant and a freelancer and so on. And if you are considering becoming a larger corporation, then team up with somebody who has some experience with that. And again, speak with the community about it. don't be alone. Don't stay alone about this.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would add is that, I mean, so I seem to remember Fabiola writing about a fund with some prefix on it. I mean, I'm not going to repeat that, but basically, I would definitely say that. I mean, you need to say for there you go. It's on the chat, and that was a good read for me. I mean, I don't know if there is I'm sure I read somewhere. I mean, but if there is a link, please do post it, Fab. And like Steen said, I mean, we're all approachable. I mean, so please do reach out. I mean, the community is great in helping each other. And I'd like to thank all my 5 panelists. And sorry, I couldn't get all the questions in, but hopefully this was useful. Thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of the summit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.